Hi, welcome to On the Wild Side. I'm your host, Kyle Shepard. Today we're going to talk about some exciting new births, some of them we've not seen in 20 years, also a conservation effort, a local conservation effort by one of our very own, and finally we're going to meet our two new residents from Australia. Let's take a walk on the wild side. We've been having a mini baby boom here at the zoo this summer. Lots of stuff going on. We have a giraffe calf, an addax calf, a tiger cub, and here to talk with us about that is our Assistant Director of Conservation, Education, and Collections, Steve Taylor. What is the importance of a baby boom like this?
It's important for a lot of different reasons because we operate in a lot of what we call managed programs with other zoos in North America. So part of those programs allows us to be able to maintain healthy and stable populations that could ultimately perhaps serve as a reservoir to help species out that are critically endangered in the wild.
And we are actually standing in front of one of our most endangered mammals here at the zoo, the addax.
Yes, so this is a perfect example. Addax antelope are critically endangered. They are actually right on the edge of extinction in the wild. The last survey done had less than 100 existing. So fortunately, because of a very well-managed population in zoos, we're able to support that population. That's what makes a calf like this so important, because of the genetics, and it helps just to stabilize a situation that otherwise we could see this wonderful species actually go extinct.
You'll see the calf and mom together quite a bit. Reese is the mom of this calf, yet to be named. So what is the nurturing process like?
This particular species, when the calves are born, they're called hiders. They don't immediately get up like a giraffe, and within 30 minutes, I've got to go with mom or I become lion food. These guys blend into their environment so well that they're hidden. So much like white-tailed deer here in the state, their fawns when they're born are hiders, and the moms will come back and get them up and they'll nurse. So I've talked to a number of guests when we first put mom and the calf out. They're like, we didn't see anything. What do you mean there's a calf out here? And I've got a picture on my phone. The calf was laying on the rocks right up there next to the building. So it looked like a little rock in the distance, and nobody knew it was a calf. And so I enjoy showing people. I'll pull the picture up and I'll go, where's the calf in the picture? You know, where's Waldo? And they go, we don't see it. It must be behind the rock. And then I expand the picture and show them the calf. So that's kind of one of the unique things with hoofed animals. Some of them have to get up and go in a hurry. And then others, like this little calf, a lot of times won't be with mom, but it'll be someplace where it's comfortable and feels like it's hidden.
With less than 100 in the vanishing wild, there's clearly a lot of challenges that this particular species go through. What identify some of those challenges for us?
First off, they don't live in the lushest of environments. They actually live in the Sahara Desert. And so that limits where they're going to be able to find food to eat, water to drink, those things, which are critical to survival, right? But now there's things like sport hunting that continues to go on. There's oil exploration in that part of the world. And actually in those areas, those little oases that exist. So we talked about addax occur naturally in the Saharan desert, right? So if you notice, we've got some sandy patches here. And where do you see the animals that are laying down? Not on the green grass, they're laying in the sand. They love that. That's an important enriching part of what we do here, is give them areas that they're comfortable in, and they love to lay on that sand.
This is our 61st calf in our 54-year history, which is a pretty good average, and that's because zoos are doing very well with that. Talk to us a little bit more in detail about what the specific species survival plan is.
So a species survival plan is created out of all of the zoos that would have a particular species in need. So for those zoos that have addax antelope, an election will take place, and a committee of about 9 people from those representative zoos will then sit, and their task is to manage the population as a whole. So it's not just what's going on here in Louisville or St. Louis Zoo, say, but it's the whole of the population. So they're looking at genetics especially. The goal is to maintain at least 95% of all the genetic material that's available in that population for a period of 100 to 200 years. So that's why we don't have lots of babies all the time. It's a managed program. So we're just trying to make sure that we're maintaining a real good population that will act as a reservoir for the wild herd.
So we have our black-footed ferret program here at the Louisville Zoo. We breed black-footed ferrets and then send them into the wild to repopulate that. Do you anticipate ever seeing a program like that with this really critically endangered species?
Yes, that program is actually in place or is being put into place. There's a similar species called a scimitar horned oryx. Very beautiful animal that lives in the same general area as the addax. They literally were down to less than 50 animals in the wild. Through a captive breeding program, the animals have been released onto particular reserves over in Saharan Africa, and so at least the population continues to, if not thrive, continues to be bolstered by animals that are actually produced in zoos. So using that as a model, we'll do the same thing for addax. But the critical question is, when you try to do that, same thing with black-footed ferret, are the issues that are causing the animal to go extinct, are they still there? Are we able to manage those in a way so that the animals don't just continue to die off? Those are the hard questions that biologists and researchers have to look at wherever animals like addax or black-footed ferret are going to be released. I love large hoofstock especially, and addax have been here at the zoo since the zoo opened in 1969, and so I've been here at the zoo since 1975. So I've seen almost all of the calves that have been born. I've seen all of the adults that have come through the program here, and I've taken care of them. As a keeper, I was one of the keepers that took care of animals like this. So it's really exciting to see a species like this that just does well, and I'm really glad to be able to show our guests the uniqueness of animals like the addax. And I love for guests to be able to come out and get to see a situation like this with a calf. And this calf's only a few weeks old, and those little horns are already growing up quick, so it's great.
So before I let you go, Steve Taylor, we've had another important birth, the Sumatran tiger, which is the first one in 20 years, which is also pretty critically endangered as well.
Our guests love tigers. Most people do. They love these large felids, and tigers are beautiful animals, but the Sumatran tiger, much like the addax, is in critical need. It's a critically endangered species. One, because it lives on the island of Sumatra in Indonesia, so that's a limited range. And then two, with a lot of palm oil plantations, as the population grows, people need spaces to live. It's just really creating just pockets of available space left for Sumatran tigers. So they are now listed as a critically endangered species. So for us to be able to have a beautiful little cub born is exciting, not only for the staff, but for our guests when it gets out here real soon. But to know that, again, as part of this managed program, we're helping to support a species that's just on the brink of extinction.
And finally, we've had a giraffe calf, which is the first time since 2012. Bariti and mom Kianga are in the yard with him now. So they're also a very important species.
Yeah, so what's going on in Africa with giraffe is what we call, it's a silent extinction that's taking place. People just don't talk about or recognize that the numbers of giraffe in Africa are really plummeting quickly. And so an animal like a Maasai giraffe that used to be very plentiful are now few and far between. So there's a lot of conservation concern and efforts taking place to try to conserve the giraffe in place over in Africa. So again, being part of the Maasai giraffe SSP is important because ultimately we can again serve as a reservoir to help support that wild population.
So why silent extinction? What are their challenges?
Much like the rest of the world, an expanding population taking over habitat. There's developments that are taking place in areas that used to be pretty pristine and remote. So bushmeat. There are people that will take giraffe because they need to eat. And all of those things then cause a population to suddenly plummet. And if we don't pay attention, an animal can suddenly go extinct. And that's something that we don't want to have happen. So silent extinction is an important term nowadays in conservation.
Our baby boom continues. We're here in the islands with our general curator, Ron Evans, to talk about our other popular birth recently, our Sumatran tiger cub. First time in 20 years, as we were mentioning. And all of this is a very detailed process. It all begins with the work we do with the species survival plan with our Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So Ron, talk to us about, first of all, what is the SSP, and then the minutia of what this looks like from start to finish.
A lot of work goes on behind the scenes long before you ever see a little baby in a zoo. Sometimes it can be 2 and 3 years worth of work before one offspring is produced. The SSP stands for Species Survival Plan. The SSP is a group of people who manages each specific animal in zoos. So there's a SSP for the Sumatran tigers, there's an SSP for the giraffes, there's an SSP for the gorillas. These are experts in our industry on each individual species. They keep track of all the genetics, they keep track of animal personalities, they keep track of every zoo's facility, and they get feedback from every single zoo. Every single zoo assigns an institutional representative. That's the person who is considered the expert on a given species to be the main communication conduit back in between, say, the Louisville Zoo and the Sumatran tiger SSP. So there's just a lot of networking, a lot of work that goes behind it. The SSP takes all of that information, and at least every 2 years, sometimes more frequently than every 2 years, they come up with a comprehensive breeding and transfer plan, which recommends animals to, maybe it's time for one of them to migrate from their natal group and go join a different family. Sometimes it's to a breeding recommendation based on where the population is as a whole. You don't want to just breed animals just because you can. You want to make sure they have a bright future. You want to make sure there's good places for these little animals to grow up into. So it's very planful and very specific, and that's what the SSP does.
In recent years, we've started to talk about, we in the zoo world have started to talk about the SSP as kind of like a Match.com, which is a term that most people understand.
It's a simple way to put it. It's like a dating service, but it goes deeper than that, actually. But that's the way most people can really kind of wrap their heads around what we're doing behind the scenes. Like I said, these things, they make these recommendations for animals to transfer sometimes 2 years or a year before the actual transfers can happen. When you move a tiger from one zoo to another, that's a lot of responsibility. A lot of work goes into just doing that. So we hit a crossroads a couple of years ago where we had the ability to help the Sumatran tiger SSP by saying, hey, you know, we have a little room in our place. How can we help you the most? Is it just you would like us to maybe give a good home to an animal, or would you like us to maybe reproduce Sumatran tigers? We're happy to help out any way we can. And they recommend it. We accept a male from one zoo, Cami, and a female from another zoo, Jinga. Both of these have reproduced before, but they hadn't in a while, and they were older animals. So Sumatran tigers, there's only about 400 of them left in the wild. They're a critically endangered species. There's only, maybe 100 in zoos. They're not common at all. So every single animal counts. So we said, absolutely, we'll be happy to step up and give it a shot. So we brought in Cami, who was older, and we brought in Jinga, who's a little on the older side too. The teams in preparation for this tiger introduction boned up on everything they needed to know in order to successfully introduce tigers. You know, tigers aren't buddies. Tigers live individually. They don't cohabitate normally. Only when a female comes into estrus do you put them together. And then it can be kind of, you know, in the wild, it's very aggressive breeding in tigers. So we just want to make sure we knew everything we could possibly know about it. So our great assistant curator of mammals, Jill Katka, reached out to colleagues around the country. She's had the keepers sit in some webinars about tiger introductions. We brought in our colleagues from CZART. They can help us monitor hormones. They help us monitor when is the best time to introduce these cats, in addition to the behaviors that we're seeing. And so we just really front loaded every preparation we could before we even introduced those two tigers together. And it all worked out great. His eyes are now open. He's mobile. His vision isn't really pinpoint focused yet. That's starting to develop right now. He still nurses from mom. He still lives with mom, but he's a little more independent now. It's getting harder for her to actually pick him up and take him where she wants to take him. So that's all great development. The keepers also have developed a very important relationship with that little cub. Mom is very happy to separate. So they go in with him and they start giving him a little bottle, not to feeding too much, but to establish that connection, just in case there's ever a time we have to give him even more formula. Right now it's all going well, but it's just good to practice that.
So at the time of filming, he's still behind the scenes with his mom, but that's coming. So what does the process look like for him getting to where the public can see him on exhibit in the day room?
Most people probably don't realize this. When you look at the wonderful habitats down here at Islands, they don't know that behind the scenes there's also a giant set of bedrooms back there for all the animals, the orangutans, the Sumatran tigers, the tapirs, the siamangs, the babirusa. They all live back there. And in between the exhibits and those bedroom areas is a very elaborate, complex transfer system, so we can rotate the animals through all the different spaces at different times. None of their lives are the same each day, and so, but that takes a little bit for a little tiger to figure out how to navigate.
We are still sharing videos on our social channels. We're still got our live cub cam up for you to watch. Hi, we're down here in the Australia area, and we are at our very new exhibit, our two koala bears, which you have seen around town, all over billboards and on the radio and on the TV, because they're our summer campaign. So meet Talawi and Daruk, and I'm here with Haley Linda, one of our keepers, longtime keepers here. What is the number one thing that people should know about Talawi and Daruk?
So the number one thing that you should know is that these guys sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. So most of the times when you come to visit them, they will be sleeping, and that's because they eat eucalyptus. That's all that they eat with their diet. So it doesn't give them a lot of extra energy. So most of the time they will be sleeping. You may see them kind of a bit more active sometimes in the mid to late afternoon, but most of the time they will be just sleeping in their perches.
So we want to be a koala when we grow up, basically.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about their personalities. Talawi is like you have an owie, like a boo-boo. Talawi and Daruk, and those have meaning too in the Australian language. Can you tell me what their names mean first?
Talawi means it's based off of a bush, a plant out in Australia, the old man salt bush. So that's where his name comes from. And then Daruk is just an Aboriginal name. So that's kind of where his name kind of originated. But that's where their names come from. And their personalities, they're both very sweet boys. Especially Talawi, he's a little bit more relaxed. He does like to jump some. We see him liking to jump from perch to perch. Whereas Daruk likes to stick his legs out when he sleeps. So there's some little unique things about them.
And when you're down here at the exhibit in Koala and you're facing the exhibit, Talawi is going to be on your right and Daruk is going to be on your left. That's pretty standard, so that you'll know who is who when you're looking at them. Koalas are marsupials, and I think we all would like a reminder about what a marsupial actually is.
So marsupial just means that they've got a pouch. So a lot of times when you think of marsupials, you're going to think of kangaroos, wallabies, possums, but a koala is also a marsupial. A lot of times people say koala bear, but they are not a bear, they are marsupials. The unique fact about them being a marsupial, though, is that their pouch is a little bit different. So whereas a kangaroo pouch opens up, theirs actually faces towards their hind legs and opens out that way. So that's a unique thing to them.
Daruk and Talawi are on loan from the Australian government because they're like ambassadors to the States. And we got them from the San Diego Zoo, which has a cooperative program with the Australian government. So they are on long-term loan from us. But tell us, you have to do some fun things to give data back to the Australian government. And one of those things is involving their waste.
Yes, so we actually count their poop every day. They have little pellets that come out, and we count those up, and then we weigh them too. So we have a weight versus the number of pellets that they poop every day. And we send that back to them just so that they can monitor their health. It actually gives them a lot of detail as to what's going on in their bodies and how they are eating and what they're doing. So we have to do that for at least 6 months just to make sure that they're doing well and adjusting to their new environment here.
You talked about that they eat exclusive eucalyptus and that doesn't give them a lot of energy, and then that's why they sleep a lot. Eucalyptus doesn't grow in Kentucky, so where do we get our eucalyptus and what kind of varieties are there?
Eucalyptus is actually very unique. There's over 600 different species of eucalyptus, which is something very interesting that we learned. We get our eucalyptus twice a week from Arizona. There is a farm out there that boxes it up for us and sends it to us via airplane. So we have to go pick it up from the airport. They will hold our eucalyptus, we'll come pick it up from them, and then we service it here. Eucalyptus can actually turn very toxic very quickly, so it's very important on how we take care of our eucalyptus to make sure we get it to them. Most animals don't eat it because it is toxic, but they can actually taste the toxicity and they know when it gets too toxic for even them, which is a really unique thing. So there's over 600 different species. We get about 8 to 10 species per shipment. That way every bundle that you see in with them is a different species of eucalyptus. They're not eating the same thing every day. So that way it gives them variety in case they may not like one of those species, they can have something different to eat.
We like to wrap our segments with talking to the keeper a little bit about how long they've been here and what is the favorite part about your job. So Haley, how long have you been at Glacier Run in general, but how long have you been at the zoo?
So I've been in Glacier Run for a little over 2 years, and then I've been at the zoo for over 7 years. I've worked in the commissary, I've worked in our gorilla area. So one of the best parts about the job is obviously the animals. That's why we always come, or why keepers tend to do what we do, is because of the animals, but also educating the people about the animals, seeing someone light up about learning something about our animals. That's one of the best things that you see when you're out here, is teaching them and showing them the animals that you love and having them also grow to love those animals.
Remember, Talawi is on the right, Daruk is on the left. You can come hang out with them daily at the Australian area at the zoo. And their keeper talks at 2:45 every day. So come learn more about our 2 new favorite Australians.
The Louisville Zoo was invited to participate in a project to salvage freshwater mussels on the Green River, part of a multi-agency effort. We're getting more involved with actual conservation efforts that are field projects, working with state agencies because of our Kentucky Tails project. This was an experiment that was done. They only added mussels to one of the aquariums. And basically after 24 hours, you can kind of see the difference of the water quality of the clear water that included the mussels versus the aquarium with only water. There's about 300 species of freshwater mussels in the United States. The Green River in particular here in Kentucky is actually one of the most biodiverse rivers in the country. And so it can actually have up to close to 70 species. They've been in the process for many years now, removing locks and dams on the Green River. So when you remove the dam, the water level starts to slowly drop over time. The day we were down there, it had dropped 1 to 2 feet in the days leading up to that. And it was predicted to drop about another 2 feet. And so the problem is a lot of these species of mussels can live within a small area their entire life. So we're talking like a square meter or square yard. And they can live to be really, really old depending on the species. So it's not unheard of for them to live 20, 30, 50, sometimes even upwards of over 70 years. So they can live a really long time and live that entire lifespan in a really small space. And they really don't have an inclination to move too much. And so as the water level drops, they can get stranded in areas where there's no more water. So it's real easy to find the ones that are stuck in the rocks. All the salvage meant was that we just picked them up and we threw them into deeper water so they'd survive. We probably found close to 1,000. It's exciting because it's an actual conservation project where we had direct effect on the ability to save wildlife.
Hey, thanks for watching On the Wild Side. Don't forget to come and visit all of these new youngsters that we have. And also, don't forget that your zoo, it's open year-round. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Wild Side.